The great alien city was alive with sound and light. Towers of silver and crystal rose high into the sky, glowing softly under two moons. Crowds of alien citizens filled the wide streets, their voices echoing in 100 strange languages. For a human, it was a place of wonder and fear at the same time. The human, a young explorer named Daniel, walked carefully among them. He was tall for his kind, but here he looked small, almost fragile. His heart beat fast as he tried to study the alien world around him. He knew he had to be careful. The rules of this city were old and strict, and humans were only guests. But fate does not always care about caution. As Daniel moved through a crowded hall filled with merchants and warriors, someone pushed from behind. His shoulder brushed against a figure passing by. It was only for a moment. It was nothing for a human. But in that moment, silence fell. The tall alien warrior turned sharply. Her skin glowed faint blue under the hall lights, her golden eyes narrowing in shock. She was dressed in armor made of shining plates, her presence so powerful that even other aliens stepped back. She looked down at the human who had touched her, and her voice rang out like thunder. "You touched me without permission, human?" The words cut through the air. The crowd gasped. Whispers spread like fire. Everyone stared at Daniel as if he had committed a terrible crime. Daniel froze. His mouth went dry. I didn't mean to," he stammered, raising his hands. "It was an accident," but no one moved. No one laughed. This was no small mistake. The alien warrior stepped closer, her eyes burning with both anger and disbelief. She stood taller than him, her voice echoing in the hall. "Do you not know the law? Do you not fear it?" Daniel's heart pounded. He had read about alien customs, but nothing prepared him for this moment. He felt the weight of 1,000 eyes pressing on him, waiting for his answer. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "I didn't know." "Please, it was not on purpose." The warrior raised her hand and silence deepened. Even the guards at the edge of the hall came forward, their weapons ready but their eyes fixed on her. "Human," she said, her tone sharp and final. "You have broken the sacred rule of my people. To touch without consent is a crime, and the punishment is written in our oldest law." The crowd murmured again, their voices filled with tension. Daniel felt the world closing in. His chest grew tight, his breath shallow. He wanted to turn, to run, but his feet refused to move. "What law?" he whispered. The warrior's golden eyes shone like fire. Her voice struck the air like a blade. "The law says you must be my mate." The words echoed in the hall. Daniel felt as if the ground had vanished beneath him. His mind spun. The whispers turned into loud voices. Some aliens laughed in disbelief, others gasped, and some shouted that the law must stand. Daniel shook his head. No, that can't be real. This is insane." "I didn't choose this. It was an accident." But the warrior did not blink. Her expression was cold, proud, unshaken. "The law does not care about your choice. The law does not bend. It is older than you, older than your world. You touched me without permission, human. And now, by the binding of our ancestors, you must be mine." Daniel's heart sank. He looked around, hoping for someone to step in, someone to tell him it was only a cruel joke. But no one did. The guards drew closer, surrounding him. The crowd pushed forward, eager to see what would happen next. Fear twisted inside him. His whole mission, his entire journey to this alien world had been to learn, to trade, to explore. And now, with one simple accident, everything had collapsed. He looked at the warrior again. She stood like a statue of iron, unshakable and fierce. Her words had sealed his fate. The hall buzzed with voices, the alien court already preparing to judge him. Daniel's mind screamed for a way out. But deep inside he felt the heavy truth. There was no escape. The law had been spoken, and so in the heart of a city he barely understood, under the eyes of an alien people who saw him as a criminal, Daniel's life changed forever with a single touch. The echo of the warrior's words still hung in the hall like thunder. "The law says you must be my mate." The alien crowd stirred, their whispers rolling like waves against stone walls. Some shouted in approval, others questioned, but none dared to challenge the ancient rule. Daniel stood frozen in the center of the circle. His breath came fast, his hands trembled, and sweat gathered on his forehead. He wanted to speak, to argue, but his tongue felt heavy. He looked at the faces around him. Rows of glowing eyes, sharp features, and unreadable expressions. No human had ever been in this position before. The warrior pointed at him, her armored hand steady. "Guards," she commanded, "bring the human to the circle of law." Two tall guards stepped forward. their armor black as night, their weapons glowing with red energy. Daniel stepped back, shaking his head.
Wait, please, you don't understand.
I didn't mean it. But the crowd laughed bitterly. One alien hissed, "The law does not care for meaning. The law cares for honor." Daniel tried to resist, but the guard's strength was beyond human. Their hands gripped his arms like iron, and he was dragged through the crowd as people whispered, mocked, and cheered. He felt like an animal being led to a cage. The circle of law was no ordinary court. It was a vast chamber carved from crystal, lit by fires that burned without smoke. At its center lay a great round platform engraved with symbols older than memory. High above sat the elders, 7 alien figures, their robes shimmering like starlight. Their faces were hidden behind masks, each mask carved with the crest of their lineage. Daniel was forced to kneel on the glowing circle. The warrior who had accused him stepped forward with pride, her armor shining as if she carried the weight of the law itself. One of the masked elders raised a hand, and the hall fell silent. "Warrior Kalen," the voice was deep and ancient, "speak the truth of this case." The warrior bowed her head. "Great elders, this human touched me without consent in the hall of our people. The law is clear. Such a crime demands binding. He must be my mate," the crowd murmured again. Daniel's chest tightened. He felt his stomach twist. His voice cracked as he shouted, "It was an accident. I didn't know. I'm human. I didn't even know your law existed." The elder's masked face turned toward him. "Ignorance does not break law. Law is older than stars. Law does not bend for outsiders." Daniel's heart dropped. "But I didn't choose this." The elder leaned forward. "No one chooses. The law chooses." The words cut deeper than a blade. Daniel stared at the floor, his hands shaking. For the first time, he realized the full weight of his situation. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a cage of tradition, and there was no key. The warrior Kalen stood tall. Her voice carried strength, but behind her eyes there was something else. A flicker of doubt, maybe even regret. "Great elders, the law must be honored. If we break it now, our people lose their pride, our ancestors lose their voice. The bond must be made." The elders nodded slowly. One of them raised a staff made of living crystal, and the light spread across the chamber. "Then it is done," the elder declared. "The bond is sealed by law. Human, from this moment you are bound to Kalen as mate." The chamber roared with sound. Some cheered the victory of tradition. Others shouted with anger, calling it dangerous to bind a human. But the decision was final. Daniel's body shook with rage and fear. He looked up at Kalen. "Why? Why don't you fight this? You don't even want me." For the first time, Kalen's eyes softened. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and her golden eyes burned with something unspoken. She leaned closer, her voice low, meant only for him. "I did not make the law," she whispered, "but now we both must carry it." The guards pulled him to his feet. His wrists were tied with glowing bands of energy, not to harm, but to symbolize the bond. The crowd parted as they walked, chanting old words, voices rising like thunder in the storm. Daniel's mind raced. He was no longer an explorer, no longer free. He had become part of something he did not understand, something older and stronger than his will. Yet even as fear ate at him, a spark lit inside his chest. A spark of anger, a spark of defiance. He was human, and humans did not bow forever. As the doors of the chamber closed behind him, Daniel whispered under his breath, "This law may bind me, but it will not break me." And somewhere deep in Kalen's golden eyes, for just a heartbeat, it seemed she agreed. The air inside the alien temple was heavy, filled with the sound of low chanting. The circle of law had spoken, and now there was no turning back. Daniel stood in the center of a glowing platform, his wrists bound with energy bands that shimmered like fireflies. Across from him, the warrior Kalen stood tall, her golden eyes fixed on him with a mixture of pride and unease. The crowd had followed them here, eager to see the ancient ritual. For centuries, this bond had joined warriors and their chosen mates, sealing their lives together, but never before had a human been part of it. Daniel's heart pounded as he looked around the vast chamber. Carvings of stars and battles decorated the walls, and tall crystal torches burned with blue flames that cast strange shadows. He felt small, almost lost in a place built for giants, yet every eye was on him. The eldest of the masked leaders stepped forward, carrying the staff of crystal. His voice echoed like a storm. "The law has spoken. The bond must be sealed." By touch, by vow, by fate itself, 2 lives shall be tied as one. Daniel shook his head. No, this is madness. I don't belong here. I didn't choose this. But Kalen's voice cut through his protest. Strong, calm, final. Nor did I. Yet the law does not ask. It commands. The elder raised the staff high and the platform glowed brighter. Strange symbols lit up beneath Daniel's feet, spreading outward in a circle. The bands on his wrist tightened, not with pain, but with weight, as if pressing his very soul. Step forward, the elder commanded. Daniel's legs felt heavy, but the guards behind him pushed. Slowly he moved toward Kalen. The warrior did not step back. Her face was unreadable, her body still as stone. When they stood only a breath apart, the elder lowered the staff. Touch hands. Seal the bond. Daniel's mind screamed. His chest ached. He wanted to run, but the entire hall waited. Slowly, with trembling fingers, he raised his hand. Kalen lifted hers, steady and unshaken. Their palms touched. A shock of energy burst between them. Light flared, rushing up their arms and into their chests. Daniel gasped as warmth and fire spread through him, filling every vein. Images flashed in his mind. Stars he had never seen. Battles fought long before his birth. Voices of alien ancestors whispering their oaths. Kalen's eyes widened, as if she too felt the same storm. Her jaw tightened, but for the first time her face showed struggle. The elder's voice thundered again. By the bond of law, by the will of the universe, your lives are now one. No distance shall break you. No time shall free you. What is done cannot be undone. The light faded, leaving only silence. The crowd bowed their heads. The bond was sealed. Daniel staggered back, clutching his chest. He felt different. Not broken, but heavier. As if he carried 2 lives at once, his own and something new. He looked at Kalen, and for a moment he saw something in her golden eyes. Not anger. Not pride. Something softer. Something almost human. The crowd roared in approval, their chants rising high. Some cheered, some shouted in defiance, but none denied what had happened. The law had been fulfilled. The guards released Daniel's bindings, for they were no longer needed. The bond itself was stronger than chains. He rubbed his wrists, but the strange warmth did not leave his skin. Kalen stepped closer, her voice low so only he could hear. Do not think this makes you free. The bond is not kindness, it is duty, and duty will test you. Daniel's lips pressed into a thin line. He wanted to shout, to fight back, but his voice caught. Deep inside, he already knew she was right. This bond was no gift. It was a prison, and yet in that prison a strange thought stirred. A thought he did not dare admit even to himself. The energy that tied them together had not only trapped him, it had changed him. The elder struck the staff against the floor, ending the ceremony. So it is done. The human and the warrior are now bound. May they stand together or fall together as fate decides. The crowd dispersed slowly, still buzzing with excitement. Some looked at Daniel with pity, others with hatred, and some with curiosity. He was no longer just an explorer. He was now a symbol, a living part of alien law. As they walked out of the temple, Kalen at his side, Daniel clenched his fists. His future was no longer his own, but his spirit whispered rebellion. If the universe demanded he be a mate, then the universe would have to face what it truly meant to bind a human. And so, the bond of fate was sealed, not in love, not in choice, but in fire, law, and destiny. The morning after the binding ceremony, Daniel woke inside a stone chamber unlike anything he had seen before. The walls glowed faintly, pulsing with blue light as if the room itself was alive. A single doorway led out to a vast courtyard where alien voices rose in chants. He sat up, his body heavy with exhaustion, his chest still burning faintly from the strange energy that had entered him during the bond. Kalen stood at the doorway, dressed again in her shining armor. Her golden eyes locked on him, sharp and unyielding. Get up, human, she said. The trials begin today. Daniel frowned, rubbing his temples. Trials? What trials? Her jaw tightened. The bond is not enough. You must prove yourself worthy. If you fail, you bring shame not only to yourself but to me. And shame has only one end. Her words sent a chill down his spine. He forced himself to his feet, though his body still trembled. So this law, it isn't just about binding me to you. It's a test? Kalen's expression softened only for a heartbeat. Every bond is tested. Ours will be no different. The courtyard was massive, surrounded by towering walls carved with the history of her people. Wars, victories, legends. Hundreds of aliens filled the stands, their eyes fixed on the human outsider. At the center of the arena stood 3 gates, each carved with strange symbols that glowed faintly. An elder stepped forward, staff in hand. His masked face turned toward the crowd. The first trial shall test survival. The human must face the beasts of the wild. If he endures, the bond stands. If he falls, the bond shatters. Daniel's throat went dry. Beasts, you mean animals? The elder's voice carried no mercy. Not animals, nightmares. The first gate opened with a grinding roar. From the shadows stepped a creature larger than a horse. Its body covered in black scales, its eyes glowing red. Its teeth were long and sharp, and its roar shook the very ground. The crowd erupted in cheers. Daniel stumbled back, panic flooding his chest. He had no weapon, no armor, nothing. Kalen's voice cut through the noise. Fight, human. The law watches. If you fall, I fall too. He turned toward her, fear in his eyes. You're not going to help me? Her expression hardened. No one can help you. But remember, you are bound to me now. What you feel, I feel. If you find strength, I will feel it too. Daniel's fist clenched. His mind screamed that this was suicide, but deep inside something stirred. He remembered Earth, his home, the endless stories of human survival, climbing mountains, crossing deserts, facing wars. Humanity had always been the small one against giants, and yet humanity had endured. The beast lunged. Daniel threw himself aside, the creature's jaws snapping inches from his face. He rolled across the dirt, scrambled to his feet, and grabbed a broken spear lying on the ground left behind from some forgotten fight. The crowd roared louder, half expecting him to be torn apart in seconds. The beast charged again, claws ripping the earth. Daniel swung the spear desperately, the tip grazing the monster's eye. It roared in rage, blood spilling down its face. Pain shot through Daniel's chest, but he realized something strange. When the beast's blood touched the ground, the glowing bond on his wrist flared brighter. A sudden rush of energy filled his arms, steadying his grip. Kalen's eyes widened from the edge of the arena. She felt it too. The bond was not only a chain, it was a source of strength. Daniel steadied his breath, his fear turning into fire. The beast circled him, snarling, but this time he did not back away. He charged. The spear sank deep into the beast's chest. It howled, thrashing wildly. But Daniel held on with all his strength. The bond's glow spread across his arms, giving him power he never thought he had. With one final push, the creature fell, its body hitting the ground with a thunderous crash. Silence filled the arena. Then slowly the crowd erupted into cheers and shouts. Some were shocked, others amazed. Never had a human stood against such a beast and lived. Daniel fell to his knees, gasping for breath, his body shaking. The bond on his wrist pulsed warmly as if alive. Kalen stepped into the arena, her face unreadable. She extended a hand to him. You survived. You fought with courage. Perhaps the law did not make a mistake after all. Daniel looked up at her, his chest still burning, his hand trembling as he took hers. He wanted to hate her, to hate this law, but part of him could not deny the truth. The bond had given him strength he did not know he possessed. The elder raised the staff high. The first trial is complete. The bond holds. The human has proven himself worthy to face the next. The crowd roared again, and Daniel felt the weight of their voices. He was no longer just an outsider. He was part of something greater, something dangerous. As he left the arena, Kalen's golden eyes met his. For the first time, there was no anger in them. Only respect, and perhaps, just perhaps, a spark of something more. The night after the trial, the alien city glowed with torchlight and songs. Crowds still whispered about the human who had stood against the beast and lived. Some called him a miracle, others a danger. But inside Kalen's private chamber, silence ruled. Daniel sat by the window, staring at the twin moons. His body ached, his arms burned with cuts, but his mind would not rest. The memory of the beast's roar still echoed in his skull. He had survived, yes, but only barely. And it wasn't just him. He felt it. The bond had carried him through. He turned his wrist, watching the faint glow of the mark. It pulsed like a heartbeat, steady and alive. Sometimes he swore he could feel Kalen's presence through it, a silent thread tying them together. Behind him, Kalen polished her armor. Her golden eyes flicked toward him, calm but unreadable. Finally, Daniel spoke. Why? Why put me through that trial? Wasn't binding me enough? Kalen paused. Her hand stilled on the armor plate. The bond is sacred, she said quietly. If it is weak, it shames both of us. Trials test strength. They prove if the law was right. Daniel turned, his voice sharp. And if I had died? Her gaze hardened. Then I would have shared your fate. Death for you would have meant death for me. The word struck him like a blade. He had thought this bond was only his prison. Now he realized it was hers as well. Then why accept it? He asked. Why not refuse? Why not fight the law? Kaylin's eyes darkened. She set down her armor and leaned closer, her voice low. Because refusal is not an option. My people live by law. Without it, we are nothing. To break it would be worse than death. Do you understand, human? Daniel swallowed. He wanted to argue, but deep inside he saw the weight in her eyes. She wasn't just obeying blindly. She was carrying something heavy, something older than herself. Still, something did not fit. There's more, isn't there? He said slowly. This law, it's not just about honor. There's something else. Kaylin turned away, her jaw tightening. Silence stretched between them. Finally, she whispered, If the bond fails, if either of us rejects it, we do not only face shame. We face the judgment of the ancestors. Punishment worse than death. Daniel's breath caught. Punishment? What kind of punishment? Her voice dropped lower. The ancestors strip the soul. They erase the line. We vanish from memory, from history. It is as if we never lived. Cold ran through Daniel's veins. He stared at the glowing mark on his wrist, the weight of it pressing down harder than chains. So if I give up, if I fail, I don't just die. I disappear. Kaylin nodded once. And so would I. The room fell silent again. Outside, the city celebrated his survival, but inside, Daniel felt the walls closing in. The bond was not only a law, it was a trap, a curse, and now he carried Kaylin's fate with his own. He clenched his fists. This isn't fair. Kaylin's lips curved in something between a smile and sorrow. Fairness is a human dream. Law is older than fairness. Daniel looked out the window again, his mind racing. Every step forward meant risk not only for himself, but for her. He thought of Earth, of freedom, of the right to choose. And now here choice had been stolen, yet he remembered the trial. The moment when the bond had flared with energy, when strength had flowed through him like fire. Without it, he would be dead. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to this bond than chains and punishment. He turned back to Kaylin. You said the law must be proven through trials. How many? She studied him, her golden eyes unreadable. 3, you survived the first. The second will test the heart. The third will test the bond itself. Daniel's chest tightened. And if I fail? Her answer came like steel. Then we are erased. He closed his eyes, forcing himself to breathe. 3 trials. Life or nothing. The weight of 2 souls on one path. When he opened them again, Kaylin was watching him carefully. For the first time, he thought he saw something in her gaze. Not just duty, not just pride. Fear. And in that fear, Daniel realized a truth. She was not as unshakable as she pretended. She had hidden motives, hidden feelings. She needed him to survive as much as he needed her. The bond was not one-sided. It was shared. He straightened, his jaw set. Then I'll survive. I don't care what your ancestors want. I don't care about your laws. I will not vanish. Kaylin studied him for a long moment, then gave a single nod. Good, because the second trial waits. And it will not test your strength. It will test your soul. The city was quieter now. The cheers of the first trial had faded, leaving only whispers. Some praised the human for his courage. Others feared what his survival meant. But in the dark corners of the alien world, not everyone accepted the bond. Daniel felt it in the stairs as he walked beside Kaylin through the markets. Every step carried weight. Some aliens moved aside with respect, but others glared with open hatred. He heard their voices in hushed tones. The human weakens us. This bond is a shame. If the law cannot be broken, then it must be destroyed. Kaylin walked tall, her hand never far from the blade at her side. She ignored the voices, but Daniel could see the tightness in her jaw. She was a warrior, proud and unyielding, yet even she could not silence her people's doubts. That night, as the moons rose, Daniel was woken by a sound outside his chamber, low, steady like claws scratching stone. He sat up, heart pounding. The glow of the bond on his wrist pulsed faintly as if warning him. The door creaked open. Shadows moved inside. 3 figures stepped forward, cloaked and masked, their weapons sharp and gleaming. Daniel stumbled back. Kaylin, He shouted. In an instant she was there, blade drawn, golden eyes burning with fire. The intruders hissed. One spat. The bond is a disgrace. We will end it tonight, steel clashed. Sparks lit the dark chamber as Kaelin met their blades with her own. Daniel pressed himself against the wall, fear racing through him. He was no trained warrior, but the bond pulsed again, flooding his veins with energy. His body moved before his mind decided. He grabbed a broken staff from the floor and swung it as one attacker lunged at him. The strike landed hard, knocking the figure back. Daniel gasped at his own strength. Kaelin's eyes flicked toward him for just a second, surprise flashing across her face. Stay close to me, she commanded, cutting down another attacker with swift precision. The intruders fought with fury, but Kaelin was faster. Her blade cut through the final mask and the figure fell with a cry. Silence returned, broken only by the heavy breaths of Daniel and Kaelin. Daniel's hands shook as he dropped the staff. They tried to kill me. Us. Just because of this bond. Kaelin wiped her blade, her face grim. Not just us. They want to kill the law itself. To them, our bond is a weakness, a threat to tradition. They would rather see blood than see a human bound to one of their own. Daniel sank to the floor, his chest tight. So it's not just about trials. There are people who want us dead no matter what. She nodded slowly. The trials test us, but our enemies will test us harder. The next day, rumors spread like wildfire. The attack had failed, but more clans were rising in anger. Some called for Kaelin's removal from the warrior order. Others demanded the human be executed before the trials could continue. The elders gathered in secret, their masked faces grim. Daniel and Kaelin stood before them. One elder spoke, his voice sharp as a blade. The bond stands, but it is tearing our people apart. This human is not welcome. His survival is an insult to our honor. Kaelin's hand tightened on her blade, but she held her tongue. Daniel stepped forward, his voice shaking but steady. I didn't ask for this bond. But if your law put me here, then I'll finish it. You want me tested? Fine, I'll face every trial. But I won't be hunted like an animal in the dark, the elders murmured. Finally, the eldest among them raised his staff. Then so it shall be. The second trial will come sooner than planned. And know this, like if you fail, human, your death will not only end you. It will silence her too. The word struck like thunder. Daniel's chest grew heavy. He glanced at Kaelin. For the first time, he saw worry in her eyes. That night, as they prepared, Kaelin stood at the window, staring at the stars. The clans will not stop. Even if we pass the trials, they will come again. You must understand, human. The bond is not just between us now. It has become a spark for war. Daniel joined her at the window, the glow of the bond reflecting in both their wrists. His voice was quiet but firm. Then we fight. Together. Because if I've learned one thing about humans, it's that we don't back down. Kaelin turned to him, her golden eyes fierce. Then be ready. The second trial does not test strength. It tests the heart. And hearts can be broken far more easily than bodies. Outside, drums began to beat, echoing through the alien city. War and trial both waited. The rising threat had only just begun. The drums of the city shook the air like thunder. The second trial had already passed, and Daniel still carried the weight of it in his chest. Visions of Kaelin's memories, her childhood, her fears, her loneliness. The trial of the heart had forced them to share more than either wanted, but it had also torn down the walls between them. He no longer saw Kaelin only as a warrior. He saw her as a person bound like him, trapped by duty but shaped by courage. Now the third and final trial had come. The trial of the bond. The arena was filled again, brighter and louder than ever before. Thousands of aliens crowded the stands, waiting to see if the law's strange choice would end in triumph or disgrace. The elders sat high above, their crystal masks gleaming. Daniel stood in the center, the glow of the bond alive on his wrist. Kaelin stood across from him, her golden eyes steady. But this time she held no weapon. The trial was not against beasts or assassins. The trial was against themselves. The eldest elder raised the staff. The bond is law. The bond is fate. Today it shall be tested. If the bond holds strong, the union will rise as legend. If it breaks, both lives will vanish, erased from time. The crowd hushed. A circle of light formed around Daniel and Kaelin, sealing them inside. The ground trembled, and the bond's glow grew brighter until it burned like fire. Daniel staggered, clutching his chest. Pain ripped through him, not of the body, but of the soul. He felt Kaelin's fear, her doubts, her hidden scars. She felt his anger, his longing for freedom, his deep ache for home. The bond was pulling them apart, testing whether they would shatter or fuse as one. Kaylin fell to one knee, her breath ragged. Human, Daniel. If you fight me, we both die. If you reject me, the ancestors erase us. Daniel dropped beside her, sweat dripping from his brow. His heart screamed for freedom, for Earth, for his old life. But when he looked into her golden eyes, he saw more. He saw someone who had carried the weight of law her whole life. Someone who had no choice, just like him. The elder's voice thundered above. Choose. Will the bond hold or will it break? The bond flared, pulling harder, demanding an answer. Daniel clenched his fists. He could give up, let the bond snap, end this nightmare, or he could accept it not as a prison but as a path. His voice rose, shaking but clear. I didn't choose this law. I didn't choose this bond. But I will choose now. I will not break. Kaylin's eyes widened, her breath catching. She placed her hand over his. Then neither will I. The bond exploded with light. The arena shook, blinding brilliance spreading outward. Daniel cried out as warmth surged through him. Not painful this time, but whole. He felt Kaylin's heartbeat inside his chest, and she felt his strength inside hers. 2 lives, 2 souls, no longer forced together but standing as one. The light faded, leaving silence. The circle of energy vanished, and Daniel and Kaylin stood, hands still joined. The mark on their wrists had changed. No longer a glowing chain, but a symbol of fire and star, alive and proud. The elders rose to their feet. For the first time, their voices carried awe. The bond holds true. Not by accident, not by law alone, but by choice. The union stands. The crowd erupted in cheers, louder than ever before. Some still shouted in anger, but their voices were drowned by the roar of approval. Daniel looked at Kaylin, his chest rising with heavy breaths. We survived. She nodded, her golden eyes softer now, almost warm. No. We became more. As they left the arena, the people parted, not in mockery this time, but in respect. The bond that began as punishment had turned into legend before their eyes. That night, standing under the twin moons, Daniel finally allowed himself to breathe freely. He was no longer just an explorer, no longer just a prisoner of alien law. He was part of something bigger, something he had chosen to protect. Kaylin stood beside him, her hand brushing his. You see, human, sometimes law creates chains, but sometimes it creates destiny. Daniel smiled faintly, the weight in his chest lighter than ever before. Then let's carry it, together. The stars above burned brighter, as if the universe itself had heard their vow. And so the story of the human and the warrior began, not as enemies, not as victims of law, but as legends written in fire and fate.